I came over because I was supposed to have some floor time at 3:30 to talk about a very important issue, which is supposed to be the issue of the day, because we have the right, when a government rule is passed, if we don't agree with it, we can get a petition up, and if we get enough in a petition, we can get a guaranteed 8 hours of debate and a up or down vote on that rule. In America, we're trying to get people to save more, to invest more, and then this administration makes it harder. So I rise today to speak in support of HJ Resolution 88, expressing congressional disapproval of the rules submitted by the Department of Labor with respect to charging for retirement investment advice. How many people do you think are going to be willing to seek investment advice if they have to sign a contract before they can even see if that's the person they want to work with? Now, it's called fiduciary and conflict of interest rule. We're all against conflict of interests. There aren't even a lot of people that know how to spell fiduciary. That's to confuse people on what this is about. We do have a retirement coverage gap in America. There are tens of millions of Americans who are not prepared for retirement. The regulation put forward by the Obama administration that we're debating today will limit the advice that individuals seeking access to retirement plans can receive. That will increase the size of this retirement gap. This regulation will significantly impede the ability of low and middle income Americans to save for retirement. They won't even have anyone to ask. Won't happen to those who have a lot of money. They've been handling this for years. I've heard for many years that the goal of this regulation is to force financial advisors to work in the best interest of their clients. I'm completely in favor of financial advisors doing so. I've co-sponsored legislation requiring that practice in law. I've co-sponsored it and tried to pass it. In fact, in my almost 20 years of working on retirement policy in the United States Senate, I've never met anyone who doesn't agree that financial advisors should act in the best interest of their customers. The problem with this rule is that it goes far beyond requiring a best interest standard. It goes so far as to effectively prohibit the means by which low and middle income Americans receive retirement advice. A massive regulatory regime has been created in this rule. It will undoubtedly raise the costs in a $24 trillion, or to put the numbers that are easier to understand, a $24,000 billion industry. Sure, large companies and retirement savers with large assets will be probably able to deal with the increased costs. But what about the small investors, the small advisors, the people interested in retirement savings, the ones who have modest assets, like most of the cities and towns in Wyoming? This rule will negatively impact the services and choices available to investors. I can't imagine why limiting options, limiting choices, and limiting services is being touted as a victory for anyone. My home state of Wyoming is hurting. Our energy-based economy is declining significantly, largely due to regulations added by the Obama administration. Now that same administration is issuing a regulation that will hurt the future savings of my constituents. Wealthy Americans across America will not be affected by this rule. Yes, wealthy Americans will not be affected. They can go about receiving their retirement advice the same way they always have. However, many of my constituents will be affected by this rule. Their retirement savings will suffer. It's as simple as that. There are approximately 28.8 million small businesses in America. Those businesses create 2 out of every 3 new private sector jobs and employ nearly half of America's workforce. I'm a former small business owner. I know well what it takes to run a small business. This rule will hurt retirement coverage among small businesses. It'll create burdens and limits options for small businesses trying to offer retirement plans. In my experience, that will result in one of two things: either increased costs or no access to retirement advice. The Obama administration is going to force small businesses to choose between paying increased fees, that'd be a tax, wouldn't it? Increased fees, and that would jeopardize the success of the business and therefore the jobs of the employees, or not providing access to retirement savings for their employees, which jeopardizes the lifelong income of those employees. It's a no-win situation for small employers who are trying to take care of their employees and grow their business. I always say, learn from the mistakes of others. There's not time enough to make them all yourself. This has been tried before. We have precedent to look to when examining the impact this rule will have on our economy. A very similar change was made in the United Kingdom just a few years ago. But this March, the United Kingdom released a study which confirmed that there's a very disturbing retirement advice gap for low and middle income individuals, the very ones I'm talking about. I've read how this administration, as well as some of my friends on the other side of the aisle, have said that rule is different than that issued by the United Kingdom. Here's the thing: it's really not all that different. The impact will be the same, and here's what has happened. Wealthy individuals are getting access to retirement advice, while middle and lower income individuals are not. I've not understood, nor will I understand, why this regulation was put forward and finalized. The Department of Labor itself admitted on February 29th, that's an interesting date, only happens in a leap year, the Department of Labor itself admitted on February 29th that relatively little is known about how people make planning and financial decisions before and during retirement. But that didn't stop them. The Department of Labor, which is the proponent of this rule, does not know how people make planning and financial decisions before and during retirement. Why would they go ahead with such a disastrous regulation? Why should such a seemingly disastrous regulation be put forward when it's unknown how many people it will affect? Perhaps they should start by finding out how the average people make investment and retirement savings decisions. The regulation that we're debating today has been lauded as one that will help low and middle income individuals save for retirement. I refute that claim with two main points. First, an analysis of a very similar change to a retirement system has proven that the opposite occurred. And second, the authors of this regulation know little or nothing about how many people this will impact, or even in what ways. People who give investment advice give it for free right now, but they can see what's coming. That's why they've been to my office and visited with me about what they're going to have to do with the people that come to them for investment advice, or people that they want to sell something to. Have to sign a contract before they can make the discussion. I don't know if you've had an insurance agent that you wanted to pay to have them talk to you. Now, they may be unintended consequences, but they will be painful consequences. As I stated in the beginning of my remarks, we have a retirement coverage gap in America. I've been working for almost 20 years in the Senate to help close that gap. All this new regulation will do is limit retirement advice for the people who need it the most. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution of disapproval. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.